We know that on average, our well-certified properties have seen significant improvements in both recruitment and retention of talent. And in fact, that is one of the biggest reasons, I would say right now, the leading reason why we hear that people elect to pursue a well certification.
Welcome to the Sustainable Hospitality Podcast, where we interview industry leaders in all areas of sustainable hospitality and tourism. I am your host, Kathy Sue McGuire, President and CEO of Sustainable Hospitality Solutions. We specialize in gaining internationally recognized ECO certifications for hotels, venues, events, and destinations. Enjoy the episode. Welcome, everyone, to the Sustainable Hospitality Podcast. I'm your host, Kathy Sue McGuire. My company, Sustainable Hospitality Solutions, provides assistance to hotels who want to achieve various ECO certifications. And we're delighted, as part of our wellness series, to have Rachel Hodgdon, President and CEO of the International Wellbeing Institute, to talk to us about Well Certified. Welcome, Rachel. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Kathy. I'm excited for this conversation.
As am I. First of all, let's just get real personal here. If you could check into any well-certified hotel tonight, anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
Ooh, that's a really fun first question because I actually have a wish list of places that are well certified that I'd really like to get to at some point in the near future. And at the top of my list is the Inn at Moonlight Beach in California and the Good Nature Hotel in Kyoto. I'm headed to Japan in November, and so I'm really hoping that I'm going to be able to squeeze in a stay at the Good Nature Hotel. It looks absolutely amazing. They have an emphasis on natural materials. They have beautiful artwork by a renowned Japanese artist all over the hotel that's made with handmade paints. They've paid particular attention to things like nourishment, air quality. They even have circadian lighting to help to regulate your sleep cycles. And all of their choices just seem incredibly intentional with the health of the guest as well as the health of the planet in mind. It was the first major hotel to be well certified.
Oh, that's amazing. That sounds wonderful. I want to go with you.
Yes,
So,
you're invited.
I would imagine, or I am curious about the employees. That's got to be great for them too. Have there been any studies done that absenteeism is lower or anything like that?
There absolutely have across portfolios of well-certified spaces, but let me start with a little story first that I think
Yes.
relates well in hospitality. I was speaking not too long ago to a gentleman who ran a senior living facility that was well certified, and he said that they had managed to recruit a top chef to cook for the senior living facility.
Wow.
And one of the reasons why the chef said that he took the job was because it was the first time that he had ever seen a commercial kitchen with a view to the outside. I still get chills when I say that because when you think about
Oh, wow.
profound health impact of spending, 12, 14, 18 hours in your day, not seeing any view, not having any access to daylight. And yet, I think that's the norm for people who work in a lot of areas of food service. And so to know that that one window made that big of a difference in him actually agreeing to take the job, that same person who I was speaking to said that their main motivation for seeking well certification wasn't actually the residents, it was the employees. Because they deal, just like hospitality, with very high rates of turnover and challenges with recruitment. He
Mm.
said to me, somebody can be a manager at McDonald's and make essentially the same salary that someone who is working in our senior living facility makes. And yet, this job is far more strenuous. It's far more rigorous. So, we
Mhm.
had to find a way to really improve the experience for our employees so that we could attract better talent and retain that talent over time. And we've definitely seen those examples repeat over and over again at different well certified spaces. We know that, for instance, at Arup's office in Melbourne, they saw nearly $600,000 in annual economic return through higher productivity, better retention, and fewer sick days. We know that on average, our well certified properties have seen significant improvements in both recruitment and retention of talent. And in fact, that is one of the biggest reasons, I would say right now, the leading reason why we hear that people elect to pursue a well certification.
That's amazing. This is something that I really hadn't thought about before, is working like almost like you're in a basement if you're in food service. You might
Yeah.
as well be. There's no, I mean, even painting the walls, there's no color or anything. They're drab beige or off-white or something. So yeah, that makes sense. That's something I hadn't thought about before. So why don't we just dive right in? Tell us what well is, and we've already heard a little bit about the benefits of it, but let's go through the whole thing. So take it
Okay.
away.
Let's start at the beginning. What is WELL? WELL is the leading global framework for advancing health and well-being in buildings, organizations, and communities. Everything that we do is grounded in scientific research. So we set evidence-based strategies for healthier indoor environments that put people first. For the past 10 years, which is about as long as WELL has been around, thousands of organizations across 140 countries have adopted WELL for their office buildings, their hotels, their schools, their homes, their shopping centers, amounting to a total of 6 billion square feet. Well breaks down the universe in terms of 10 concepts or topics.
Mhm.
And those range from, let's see if I can do them all, air, water quality, nourishment, lighting quality, physical movement, thermal comfort, sound or acoustics, material health, mental health, and community connectivity.
Oh, that's amazing. I just love that because it that covers everything.
Yeah, we've tried to think about all of the ways in which the physical environment and social environments working in combination can
Mhm.
impact people's health, well-being, and productivity. And what we know, thanks to what's called the social determinants of health, which is like a commonly held truth within public health spheres, is that where
Mhm.
you sit and who you sit next to, your physical and your social environments, has a bigger impact on your health and well-being than your access to healthcare or your genetics combined.
I have to tell you a little story of my own, is that I was working for a company and they didn't want to expand physically. So where one person's tiny office, they put two of us. And I can't concentrate when somebody else is doing their thing and talking over here beside me. And then people are coming by and stopping by to chat with that person all the time. It was
Yeah.
constant interruption. And I just couldn't take, I had to quit the job because I said, I can't work here.
I mean, it's a perfect example. There are so many ways in which we know that physical environments impact our productivity and impact our health. And yet, many of these things are invisible, like invisible to the eye. And so they can be easy to forget or overlook. So, what you're talking about in terms of what is essentially a poor acoustic environment. And of course, there
Mhm.
are solutions that can be deployed for two people sitting next to each other, clearly not in place at that office.
Yeah.
But poor acoustics can not only impact things like focus, retention, and productivity, but can also increase your risk of heart disease. That's the amount of stress that poor acoustics can generate in the body. So that's something that Well addresses head on through things like sound masking systems and appropriate acoustical design, depending on what the needs of that space are.
Yeah.
Air is another really important one for everyone, but especially in hospitality, because the air that we breathe impacts everything from our heart health to our respiratory health to our cognition and decision making. And it has a
Yes.
significant impact on our ability to get a good night's sleep. And we all know that that is the one fundamental expectation of any guest walking into a good hotel, that they'll be able to get a good night's sleep when they lay their head on that pillow.
That's absolutely right. I remember when I worked at a hotel property, we had to each one of us had to rotate being manager on duty at night, and we spent the night. Oh my gosh, I could not sleep. You know, 2 nights of that, it was just because it was not a well, property in any way, shape, or form. So I do understand that.
It's interesting you mentioned that. We have a Well for Residential program that's just coming out of pilot. We were shocked by the level of interest, not just across the board from the residential market, but also from long-term stay hotels and resorts. And so we've had some really interesting experiences through the 40,000 residences that were enrolled in our pilot, particularly on the hospitality side, because we've been having conversations with hotel operators about whether the requirements of well should extend to the spaces that staff occupy. And I think this is
Mm,
like a really challenging question. On the one hand, you could take that purist perspective and say everybody deserves healthy air to
yeah.
breathe and, a quality bed and blackout shades. But I think that
Hmm.
that's a big leap for a lot of hotels to make, particularly in certain markets where that is just not the norm. And
Yeah.
so we've had some really interesting conversations about that and try to reframe it in terms of what are the benefits that would come from having employees that, worked the night shift or had to spend a night there and are more alert in the morning, and
Yeah.
are ready to do their best work because the guest experience is shaped more than anything by the people who are
Yes.
working at that hotel. And so you want your people to get a good night's sleep as much as you want your guests to. Like if to us it seems like a worthwhile investment, but that's been a really interesting and kind of eye-opening dialogue.
Just recently, the Breakers Hotel in Palm Beach. I live in Palm Beach County. It's on the other side of the water. I live on the west side of the water, West Palm Beach. Um, because we have very little workforce housing, they're
Yes.
building their own workforce housing
Yes.
for their employees. And I just wonder if they even thought about you know, going in that direction with well and maybe, but they are one of the most sustainable hotels. Really, they were one of the, I think they were the first one in Palm Beach County to start composting and on site, and also reverse osmosis on the golf course. All kinds of things, changing out their lighting, putting window
Mm,
film on the windows, and
right.
amazing. So I'm sure that they've looked into those kinds of things. So,
I
yeah,
hope so. I mean,
continue.
at least
Yes,
in the US, because of some of the incentives that are in place, we do see a almost disproportionate level of engagement with green and healthy building strategies and affordable housing. That might sound really surprising because you might
it
think
does.
that so often the people who have the least suffer the most from environmental woes and from poor indoor environments. But it's because of the governmental incentives and subsidies that are tied to participation in green and healthy certifications like Enterprise Green Communities and Well. And so that's a really happy part of the story. I don't think that's the norm across the United States, and it's not exactly common for the average person who's like living in subsidized governmental or affordable housing. I'm really
Exactly.
hoping that by making a lot of these strategies more accessible and more affordable, that we'll see wider adoption, particularly for affordable and market rate homes. And I would say the same thing for hospitality. You shouldn't have
Yes,
to pay for a five-star hotel to have some of these basic, amenities and benefits, really good air or clean water to drink. These things should be table stakes.
exactly. So tell us more about some of the categories that you mentioned in the very beginning.
Of the well standard?
Yeah. Yes.
Sure. So I'll tell you about them through the lens of hospitality. How about
Yeah.
that? So
Yes,
um,
please.
movement is a really good example of this. You may have heard the saying, sitting is the new smoking. And what we know is that sedentary behavior is driving all kinds of health related woes, from diabetes to heart disease and other things that lead to premature death. So the more that we can stay moving in our lives, the better off we are. How do I see well certified hotels prioritizing this? I see them moving the gyms up from the basement so that there's great light. They're more compelling places to work out. They're
Yes.
probably have better attributes for air quality. Like they are set up better than like a dim, damp basement for having good air quality. And they're just places that you want to be. We also see increasingly hotels having equipment that's either in the room, furniture that doubles as workout equipment, or just really
Mm.
proactively promoting that you can request a yoga mat. You can request hand weights, for instance. So that's one where I see that hotels have done a really great job and in some ways are leading as compared to, for instance, like office gyms in terms of how they think about those spaces for physical movement, yoga studios, bringing in local instructors. I was just at my favorite hotel in London where they have all manner of different wellness options like Pilates, yoga,
Oh,
sound baths, things like that. And then I want to mention one other that I think is really important for hotels. We've actually touched on it already, and that is sound acoustics. This is
mhm.
something that we know can have a very significant impact on the guest experience, particularly at night when you're sleeping. And so, thinking about sound absorbing materials, thinking about having adequate insulation and design of adjacent spaces so that noise isn't carrying from one room to the other, soft closed doors. And there's an additional
Mm.
challenge for a lot of health-focused hotels that are opting out of carpet in guest rooms. You have to deploy other strategies to make sure that that sound
Yeah,
isn't transferring from room to room or from floor to floor.
right. I remember I stayed at a hotel downtown Atlanta for a conference, and there were sirens going off all night long.
Yes.
No sleep at all.
I mean, that can be the worst, and I'm glad you mentioned it because I didn't. That making sure that you have windows that are also really quiet. There are some great solutions for retrofitting historic windows or existing windows that can be
Mhm.
added on top for a more affordable option, or when you don't actually own your own property, so you're somewhat limited in what you can do. And there are
Mhm.
other kind of add-on strategies that exist when you're dealing with these like external circumstances. But I totally agree. One of the things I'm often challenged by is that if a hotel room has operable windows, I often prefer to have some fresh air. But
Mhm.
if you're in an urban environment, you're probably trading off for those sirens at night. So hotels that
Yeah.
have really done a good job of thinking about providing fresh air supply in the room with the windows closed through excellent HVAC design, that's a place where I know that I'm going to get great air quality without having to crack those windows open and expose myself to any sounds outside.
Right. Um, I'm curious about specifically the thermal
Yes.
comfort because everybody's so different. It's like, oh, it's too
Yeah.
cold in here, it's too hot in here. And I know part of it because I've studied the well. I was thinking of becoming a well AP, and so I've studied it. But I have not pursued it because where I live, there's not a big. I live in Florida. There's not a big market yet for it. Hopefully, it will grow. If there's any place that it could, it would be Miami,
Yeah.
which is about an hour and a half from where I am. So, how do you handle that when people, feel
Everybody has
different,
different
cold and heat
preferences.
differently? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the best strategy is thermal controllability, and it is fairly common. I've found that you'll have a thermostat in the room where you can adjust to your liking. I think hotels that have set points that don't result in a freezing cold hotel room the moment that you walk in are getting ahead of the thermal comfort concerns. So when you kind of pick a middle of the road temperature, so you only have a few
Mhm.
degrees where you have to move if you're too hot or too cold, that's a really good start. And it's a great way to save on energy as well. I do think that. Um, that the other thing, that a hotel obviously can do in terms of thermal comfort is offer appropriate bedding options, things that
Mhm.
provide warmth but are breathable, for instance, or having multiple blankets that you have on like a single bed, like the extra blanket at the foot of the bed. So if somebody runs particularly cold, they can add that
Yeah.
extra blanket. But I do think that controllability is the most important thing. So making sure that your thermostat is positioned in a place where someone can easily find it, and either it's
Hmm.
very intuitive to operate or there's a set of simple instructions right next to the thermostat.
Right. What other component of well is like, maybe very popular or you get the most feedback on what do you think?
Well, I touched really briefly on circadian lighting,
Hmm.
and I'll go into a little more detail because I don't think that is a common term that everybody is familiar
Yes.
with. So, circadian lighting pertains to a particular approach to lighting where light levels and the degree to which the light is warm or cool in tone is changed throughout the day to mimic the patterns of the sun, the rise of the sun and the setting of the sun every day, and therefore to entrain our circadian rhythms and prime us for a good night's sleep. So this
Hmm.
is, I think, an extra cool feature in hotels because a good night's sleep is your business. And so having circadian lighting, like the hotel I mentioned in Kyoto, will help to entrain people's biological rhythms to be able to sleep better at night. And so, what you might notice in a place that had circadian lighting is that in the daytime, that light is going to be very like white and bright and cool. And in the evening, the light will not only be dimmer, but it will also be warmer. It will also be, like maybe a little bit more like yellow or orange in its feel, because that's
Hmm.
the same thing that if you were outside, you would be
Yeah.
encountering. And our bodies biologically crave that.
Yeah, I agree. I love that. I've not been in a hotel where they've had that, but hopefully there are more and more. Let's talk about nourishment.
Yes. We're going to touch on all the good categories. So, nourishment
Yes.
is another one that maps right to the core business of hospitality. We have seen all kinds of really exciting innovations from hospitality and other sectors as well around nourishment, highlighting healthier food choices on menus, maybe through a collab with a local or well-known chef, offering healthier snack foods and drinks in the rooms themselves, the mini fridges, the mini bars, as well as, in any centrally located places in the hotel where you could buy food. Um, Alongside healthier food choices are healthier drink choices. And in particular, having water that is filtered for guests so that they're not drinking out of plastic water bottles. Those come with their own set of health concerns. They're not having to
Yes.
pay for those plastic water bottles. And so that customers have confidence that the water that they're drinking is clean. So they're going to be more likely to stay hydrated because they'll just keep tanking up on the filtered water. I've seen hotels have a good time with things like infusions, in the lobby. I was just at a hotel that had, a citrus and mint option and a, strawberry watermelon option. And that is a much healthier choice than, for instance, a carbonated high sugar beverage. And
Yeah.
it's also hydration is one of the most important things we can do for our day-to-day health, our energy levels, and our sleep.
That makes perfect sense. And incorporating all of these things into one building like a hotel, that would just be, I would think you wouldn't have any occupancy issues at all. They'd be full all the time,
I
right?
mean that is the goal, right? And we definitely have seen in a parallel universe where we're so much in touch with a lot of our customers on the trends related to return to office and all that employers are trying to sort through in terms of how to
Yeah.
get people to come to the space, that there is a massive difference in well-certified spaces in terms of being places that people want to be. And the research there is incredibly compelling. We've seen massive increases um, in satisfaction with the building. We've seen, for instance, one study that found that people were 94% uh, likely to be satisfied in well-certified buildings, and that's across their satisfaction with access to daylight, acoustical privacy, lighting, thermal comfort, indoor air quality, all of these different domains. And you could say, like, well, how much is a guest really tuned into those things? And I think the answer to that is on one level or another, we are. Like, does everybody walk in and go, like, you know, what's
Yeah.
that scent in the air and is it healthy for me? Or is that mold that I smell? I mean, I'm that person, but I'm not a normal
Yes.
customer. But what I can say is that on some level, your body feels that. So maybe it's just like the vibe, but you walk out of that hotel and you feel energized. You feel like you had a great night's sleep. You woke up feeling your best. You were ready for whatever big day you had on the road or whatever, fun day you wanted to have with your family. That will stick with you.
And I can attest to that because even though this wasn't a well certified building, it was LEED. It was either gold or platinum. And it
Yeah.
was the Office Depot headquarters just south of me in Boca Raton.
Yes.
I was a member of the US Green Building Council, and I started the first hospitality and tourism committee in
Yeah.
our chapter.
Yeah.
And so we went to the
Cool.
building, and as soon as I walked in, it was like, I I'm getting goosebumps now. I had this rush of endorphins or something, a tingling of vibe. I'm like, I don't smell anything, but it smells so good in here because
Yeah.
clean doesn't have a smell
That's
if you
right.
think about it,
That's
right?
it's the
Pine
absence
Sol, everybody
of.
says, Pine Sol, it smells so clean. It's like, no, that's not it. But I felt, and that was just a lead building that had, better, materials in the building and carpets and things like that. So
Absolutely.
um, I can imagine that if this really takes off, that people are going to say, I need to go to work so I can feel better.
That's
Can you
exactly what
imagine?
is happening. Yes, I mean, right, I'm in New York City today. Right down the road from my office is Citibank's headquarters. They are both LEED Platinum and Well Platinum. And I was taking a tour with the head of facilities, and I asked him, has this building had a noticeable impact on recruitment and retention? And he said, we think of this building as one giant recruitment mechanism. He said, since we moved into this new space, people are leaving our competitors in droves because they want to work here. And with other things in financial services being relatively equal, like the pay is competitive no matter where you go. The brands are all reputable. Like I'm sure the benefits packages are very similar, but that building has become this massive differentiating factor. And we
Yeah.
hear that time and time again from all kinds of different spaces. I heard the same thing touring a LEED and well certified school in Washington, D.C. The principal was
Can you,
telling me
oh,
nobody wants to leave. She said, I had
can
no
you
turnover.
imagine how happy those and healthy those that children would be? That's
Oh my gosh.
amazing.
Don't even get me started on the schools, Kathy. That used to be what I got to
I
do
know.
all the time. My mom, I mean, it's honestly, it's what inspired my work in this field. My mom has permanent respiratory damage from being in sick classrooms. And I was working, in
So
fact,
sorry.
at the U.S. Green Building Council. I don't know if you knew that about me, but I was working at USGBC probably around the same time that you were engaged. And I was the head of the Green Schools program. So one of the best
You
perks of the
were.
job was I got to go do all of these like plaque presentations at LEED certified schools. I remember being at one in West Palm Beach with the most amazing hydroponic vertical gardens. But I would show up at these schools and I would hear from parents who said, my kid needed their inhaler Monday through Friday. They moved into this school. They haven't needed it once. I heard from teachers in Georgia who told me that they no longer suffered from the 2:30 headache, which was a term that they had coined to describe how sick they felt after a full day in the school building. Sick building
Hmm.
syndrome is a real thing.
Yeah.
And schools, in particular, have suffered from aging facilities that
Hmm.
are way behind in terms of their repairs and their maintenance.
Yeah.
And so there are um, thousands and thousands of schools in the US alone that have air that is unsafe to breathe.
Absolutely. I agree with that. 100%. I almost wish if we were going to have some kind of policy, government policy, it would be let's get these schools fixed first for these kids,
Yes,
then go to another level,
I
for
know.
sure.
Absolutely. And thankfully, some of those policies do exist at the state and local level. But the
Hmm.
federal government, not only are there no policies, but the federal government contributes almost nothing to the
Right.
nation's expenditure on school facilities. And this is one of the
Yeah.
core problems for sure.
Yeah. What other category have we not touched on yet? Um,
Well, we could talk about material health.
Materials, and there's mind and community. Yeah.
And I have a bone that I would like to pick with hospitality writ large, I would say,
Please.
that has to do with material health, and that is the use of carpet, wall-to-wall carpet inside of guest rooms. This is my number one requirement when I choose a hotel. I will go out of my way. I will, you know, depart from the hotel block of my conference where everybody is staying and where I would prefer to stay for convenience, and for
Yeah.
networking, just to get that room with hard surfacing. I have no issue with carpet in general, with it in the hallways, the common spaces, or area rugs. But I mean, just think about it. Like every bit of bad, dirty behavior that has ever happened in that hotel room over the lifespan of that carpet is still in that carpet. So
I
like every
know.
baby rolling around in a dirty diaper, every kid who's sneezing, I won't go on.
Everything on the
Your
bottom of your
imagination can
shoes and
do the work.
everything.
Yes, the
I,
lead that you're tracking in from the street, it's all in the carpet. And let's be honest, most people don't take care of their hotel rooms like they do their homes. And so
no.
I walk into a hotel that has wall-to-wall carpet. I immediately feel it in my respiratory
Mhm.
system. I immediately get congested. Same thing if I'm at like someone's home who has a pet and isn't, doing
Mhm.
frequent cleanings for their carpets. And so I would say if I could offer one tip for hospitality for the future, it's when you get ready to do that next retrofit, seriously consider some type of hard surfacing. Doesn't have to be hardwood floors. It could be tile. It could
Yeah.
be, linoleum, any number of choices, but that will radically improve the guest experience and I hope make maintenance easier as well.
Yeah. And I think that's changing. I see a lot of
I
hotels
agree.
taking the carpet out because I know when I stay in a hotel that has carpet in the guest room, I won't take my socks off
Oh yeah, definitely
in the
not. I
guest
mean,
room.
unless it is
Or I
absolutely
wear
only.
my sandals, my flip-flops around.
Totally. I mean, for
Yeah.
me, I just won't stay in one if there's any other alternative. Like I just had to
Yeah.
scour every hotel photo in Pittsburgh to find a
Yeah.
hotel with hard surfacing. But that is at the very top of my list. It used to be another material related thing. It used to be white bedding because you know that in the days of those floral comforters, they did not wash those between guests. And so, but thankfully,
Hey,
white bedding has become something of standard practice. And the sheets, wrapped as duvet that do get washed every time. So I'm really hopeful and agree that I see a growing trend and more availability of hardwood floors and other hard surfacing.
you might want to bring your own pillow or extra or ask for extra pillowcases because I'm
Yes,
not sure how often those pillows are replaced.
I agree with you. I just had
Talk
that
about
experience.
materials.
I just had that experience myself in a long-term stay location, and 3 days in, went out and bought a new pillow. I couldn't do it. I made
Yeah,
the mistake of taking the pillowcase off, and I thought, oh,
I
so
know.
BYO,
Don't, it's like,
BYO
don't
pillow is
look.
not a bad idea. Not a bad idea at all.
Our sponsor today is Z3 Data, a comprehensive solution that takes the pain out of assembling, analyzing, and reporting waste and recycling data from your hauler invoices. Managing waste and sustainability data can be a real headache. Whether your organization is pursuing WELL, LEED, TRUE, or another eco certification, or simply aiming to reduce waste and improve reporting, tracking all those waste streams is no small task. That's where Z3 Data comes in. Their software-enabled services streamline waste data collection, simplify reporting, and deliver actionable insights that support waste diversion and sustainability performance. With Z3 Data, you save countless hours of manual work, improve accuracy, and make certification documentation or internal reporting far easier. Stop drowning in spreadsheets. Streamline your waste reporting and sustainability efforts. Their AI standardizes data from invoices and documents. Their platform maps data to property-specific service schedules. Their powerful analytics library generates comprehensive reports. And their data integrates with sustainability software and third-party platforms. Learn more and book a free demo at z3data.com. Z3 Data, your partner in efficient waste reporting and sustainability data management. Okay, what about, let's see, mind and then community?
Yeah. Mind is a really interesting concept when we think about when we think about hospitality applications. Some examples of where we see mind-related interventions or features in well-certified hospitality is the use of biophilia inside of the hotel and even inside of the guest rooms. Biophilia doesn't necessarily have to mean living plants. It can also be beautiful nature images like the one that's behind you. Um,
Mhm.
Having really beautifully, appointed courtyards that are very lush and again, just like summon those nature-based experiences. Natural materials is another great example, just like that Kyoto hotel that I mentioned. Um, Soundscaping is another one that I saw quite a bit when I traveled to Asia. So having sounds in spaces that bring forward nature-related
Yeah,
sounds that would be familiar, birds and breezes and moving water and things like that. Water
yeah.
features. It's another thing that we know has a calming effect on the mind. But here's another thing that you might not think about: having a room for your employees working long shifts where they can go to take a rest during the day.
Yes.
This is something that can profoundly impact the energy levels in the workplace, creating spaces where when people are on their breaks, they can lie down, they can take a rest. Maybe there's aromatherapy in that room. Maybe there are comfortable
Mhm.
blankets that get cleaned regularly. Maybe there's nature sounds, or other
Mhm.
things that soothe. That's one that would be out of the line of sight to guests, but could still really impact their experience because the people who are supporting them are refreshed and revived.
That's true because a lot of people work double shifts because of the pay level.
Yes.
If they're either working a second job. I can't tell you how many hourly people work two and three jobs or
Yep.
take double shifts anytime they can, and that would be a great thing to offer your
Totally.
employees. And hoteliers are complaining about turnover and not being able to find people to work because it's a hard job, no
It is
matter
a
what
it is a hard
department
job.
you're in.
So
If you're
true.
on an hourly pay and you're the one actually doing the work, and not sitting at a desk, you're working hard.
That's right. And employee burnout isn't just a personal issue, it's a business one. So,
Yeah.
one good stat for you, the American Journal of Preventative Medicine said that burnout costs employers thousands per employee each year, over 5 million annually for a 1,000-person company, for instance. Employee burnout costs employers an average of $4,000 for an hourly non-manager, and up to $20,000 plus for an executive. And so these are real business
Mm,
costs. Turnover has major cost to a business. Having to recruit and onboard a new employee, no matter where they're working in the
yeah.
business, is expensive. And that's
Yes.
why it continues to perplex me that people are so compelled by the notion of energy and water savings in green buildings
Yeah.
and not as compelled by the notion of the savings that would come from improved performance of people, improved recruitment and retention. I think people find oftentimes that it's harder to measure these things or to understand what the root cause of those things are, like what has impacted, for instance, a positive improvement in turnover from your old building to your new building. But let's just do the math for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Typical business, your utilities, your energy, your water, 1% at best of your annual business operating costs.
Mm-hmm.
90% is in your people.
Yeah. Payroll.
So this question of whether you can afford to do a certification or afford to implement healthy strategies for your employees, it's not a question of can afford it. It's a question of how can we not? Like, can
Yes.
we afford not to do these things? And we know that in an increasingly competitive market, where just like I was saying in that senior living example, people can find way less strenuous and stressful jobs that pay the same amounts of money. We're going to have to find
Mm-hmm.
other reasons to compel people to work in our spaces. And so I would say that if I were the owner of a hospitality business, my I suspect my primary motivation would be for my employees because I'd be
Yeah.
looking at my bottom line saying, how am I going to justify this to my shareholders or my investors? And the answer is in the bottom line.
And let me share some positive news is on LinkedIn. This is being talked about a lot, employee retention. And kind of a segue, do you have everything we're talking about today, start putting those things out? If you send them to me, I'll send them out. So,
Okay.
because they're
Yeah.
not exactly talking about um, wellness, for employees, they're talking about retention in a way it's like, don't work them so hard, pay them more.
Right.
Uh, um, be kind, those kinds of things, and they're important.
Yeah.
But nobody's talking about what we're talking about here today. So you send that information to me, and
This
I'll
is
put it out there.
This is perfect timing. We just released our second edition of our special report, Investing in Health Pays Back. What we've done is we've gone out and
Oh,
gathered all of the best third-party research, case studies, and case stories that speak to individual types of interventions. Like if you improve air quality, these are the kind of gains that you could
oh,
expect.
wow.
And also writ large, healthy buildings in general. How do they improve real estate returns? How do they improve recruitment and retention? How do they improve occupant experience? So all of that in one place, free download with all the citations. It's like an amazing advocacy resource for anyone who is like the lone champion on this issue. So we'll make sure that we share the link that you can share with your listeners and your community. And we'll
Yes.
also include a case study on one of the well-certified hotels that I mentioned at the start here. It's that beautiful hotel in California called the Inn at Moonlight Beach, and there's a wonderful project profile that got written up on that, as well as an article that we'll also send written by a journalist who stayed at that hotel and thought this is really different and really exceptional and started tracing
Great.
it back to figure out why, figured out it was well certified, and then wrote this terrific piece on the whole experience. So we'll share all three.
Oh, love that. Well, let's move to community, and then we'll begin talking about the process of becoming well certified. How about that?
That sounds great. So let's talk about community because I think that um, This is another great opportunity to improve recruitment and retention when you give your employees opportunities to feel connected to the community, to volunteer within those communities, to feel a sense of pride for the job that you have. And that can take lots of different shapes and forms. It can be about how you open up your space, for instance, in times of crisis, which we saw happen a lot over the course of the pandemic, the wildfires. It could be about volunteerism and giving your employees paid time off to volunteer or organizing annual volunteer activities in the community. It could be about making visible philanthropic opportunities or having employee matching programs for people that make contributions to local charities. There's many, many different ways for hospitality to exhibit those commitments to the community that they are a part of. And I think it's so important to give employees that sense of pride and that sense of connectivity. Of course, it can also be an opportunity for storytelling and marketing to your guests as well. And it can ensure that the community has a good feeling about you. I was just talking to someone about ecotourism and one business that they were particularly fond of that they thought had done it right. And they were saying that a big part of what that hotel had done was volunteering in the community. They had a school on site for the employees' children. They had
Wow.
like you were saying before, places where employees could stay, affordable housing because there wasn't enough housing on this really small island to actually accommodate all of the people they needed to work at that new resort. So I
Hmm.
think community connectivity is one of those things where a little bit of investment can really have profound impacts in return.
Oh, that's terrific. And I don't think that anybody can say volunteering their time doesn't just feel good, right?
It does feel good, and it's scientifically proven
Oh,
that
great.
volunteering is a gift that you give yourself. It can improve
Yeah.
mood, reduce the signs of depression. It can help you to feel less isolated. You've probably heard about, the epidemic of loneliness
Yeah.
that so many people are facing, and volunteering is the antidote to all of that.
Yeah, I agree. So let's move into what's the process.
Okay. Well, the process.
Somebody's in that some there got to be people interested in getting well certified.
I
So
hope
let's tell
so.
them how to do it.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. You enroll in Well. You decide on, which milestone you want to pursue because not only do we have the option of Well certification, which is like the pinnacle achievement, but we also have specialty themed ratings, which are a
Mm.
great way to get started, a great way to onboard. So ratings are um, themed subsets of the Well standard. And one of the ones that's been most popular for hospitality is our Well Health Safety Rating. It was launched in 2020 during the pandemic, but it looks at much more, of course, than COVID-19. It looks at health and safety solutions through operations and management with a particular focus on acute health threats. So you're talking about validating operational policies, maintenance protocols, emergency plans to really shore up the health and well-being of everybody who's working and staying within the space. And we've seen a huge amount of adoption of this rating in particular within the hospitality sector, looking to strengthen guest confidence, differentiate themselves, and support their workforce. So many, many big brands and small brands as well have utilized that solution. So whether you're pursuing that rating or you're pursuing a certification, you enroll in Well, you pay a registration fee. That's going to get you access to all of our online tools and submittal portals. It'll get you access to support for your project. You submit your documentation. If you're going for a full Well certification, there's also a performance test that happens once the project is complete or near completion, where a third-party performance testing organization actually comes in and tests the air, tests the water, tests the
Um,
lighting to make sure that everything is what you were hoping for, is everything that you designed for, which is something that often, unfortunately, doesn't get checked and never materializes. So you've paid a lot of money for great air quality. Are you getting it? Oftentimes,
yeah.
that process illuminates things that were accidents and that probably otherwise no one would have discovered. There was um, a building in Los Angeles, and they were so perplexed because they kept failing the air quality testing in the lobby. They failed it twice. And they were like, we've done everything. What is going on here? And they figured out that the pistons in the elevator shaft were pumping unfiltered air from outside of the building. And they said if it wasn't for well, they never would have figured that out.
Mhm.
So
That's
that piece of
amazing.
it is really important. And like if I were a building owner or even someone who is about to occupy a building owned by someone else, I would want to make sure that those things actually, like that the results were what we were aiming for and that we paid probably a lot of money for. And so that's a distinguishing aspect of the WELL certification process. So once you pass performance verification, um, that's it. We do the final review of your documentation and we send you that plaque or that seal. And then depending on which designation you've pursued, you do like a streamlined renewal on a regular basis, just to confirm that you're keeping up with all of your original commitments.
I like the credibility aspect of Well and Lead and
Thank you.
a couple of others. For a long time, they're in some eco certifications. There's been no verification
Yeah.
of these kinds of things. So it just proves you're doing what you say you're doing. And
Yeah.
also it's a sales point. If you're in real estate and you want to sell that building, look what you've got. It's like we've proven
Yes.
that this is
Yeah.
a great building to work in.
And I would say I have seen more of those self-certifications in hospitality than in any other sector. Often
I agree. I'm telling you
I
right
know
now.
that this
I
is one of
agree.
your perspectives too, that I'm preaching to the
Yes.
choir with you.
Yeah.
But I do think that
I'm
there
glad
is
you
like,
mentioned it.
yeah, and there's a brand integrity issue with that. I think especially when the focus of some of those systems is very much front of house, and doesn't necessarily reward for holistic efforts. And when it's just like, trust us, submit
Yeah.
documents, check your boxes, and you know, we'll ship you your certification. We think that the importance of third-party validation and
Mhm.
third-party testing is really vital for ensuring that the things you aim to do got done and you get all the
Yeah.
benefits.
Yeah, exactly. And well, one step forward is that the online travel agencies now require third party audit.
Nice.
There's no more self-reporting and checking
Right.
the boxes on your profile. So that's a step in the right direction, but
It is,
they're
yeah.
allowing for virtual audits that aren't as rigorous, obviously, as having someone come in person
Right,
and look
right.
around.
It's a good step forward, though. It's a good step
Yeah,
forward.
it's a step. It's a step. What else have I missed in what you would like to tell us, share with us? I think we
Well,
covered a lot.
we have covered a lot of ground, but I guess that I would simply say to just put a finer point on the conversation that we've been having as it pertains to the message that wealth sends when a hotel or any, business in hospitality invests in well, they're doing more than just improving the guest experience. They're sending
Mhm.
a clear message to their teams that their health matters too. And that kind of support translates directly into higher satisfaction, lower turnover, and a stronger culture within that organization. Hotels don't just serve guests, they also have to be in service to the thousands of people who work under high stress, to your points, long or irregular hours, physically demanding. And we know through the research that buildings have an outsized role in shaping our health, our energy performance, and our overall job satisfaction. And that is where I think the business case is for WELL certification. And I think it's a business case that would be a mistake to ignore because, like I said, that's where the money is, that's where the savings are, and that's where the profitability is going to be found too.
Well, that's a great place to end our conversation. It was terrific. Rachel, I really appreciate it. Where do people go to look into the well certification?
You can visit wellcertified.com And if you want to find that really great Investing in Health Pays Back report, you can look under the Why Well tab to find that report and get a free download.
That sounds terrific. Rachel Hodgdon, President and CEO of the International Wellbeing Institute, thank you for joining us today. Take care. Thank you for tuning in to the Sustainable Hospitality Podcast. If you're ready to take meaningful action and set your property apart as a leader in sustainability, my company, Sustainable Hospitality Solutions, is here to help. Our Achieving Green Keys certification training program provides hotels with a clear step-by-step path to earning this internationally recognized eco certification. Please go to sustainablehospitalitytraining.com. Thank you.